Now we're gonna talk about the week one culture and moral behavior. So, culture and moral behavior is kind of to act according to one's moral values and standards. So, dapat igalang natin ang ibang kultura, ibang religion, at ibang mga tao. Depende sa kanilang paniniwala. Sinasabi nga dito na dapat walang diskriminasyon na nagaganap sa culture dahil lahat tayo may kanya-kanyang culture, belief in life na dapat igalang natin ng bawat isa. Kasakali niya dito ang ita is example ng ita is dapat igalang natin sila kung paano sila mamuhay, ang culture nila, kung sino yung pinaniniwala na, sapagkat iisa tayong tao na hindi dapat nagja-judge sa ibang religion at belief nga. So, alam naman natin ang moral is kind of doing right. So, as a person, as a human being, we need to use this kind of attitude that may help other people to not judge other culture. So, ano pa yung beneficio nun sa community, community? So, sa community, a whole community, as well as the Philippines, is they have a different kind of religion, belief, culture, katulad ng Iglesia ni Cristo, Mormons. So, dapat, huwag natin silang i-judge base sa kanilang pananaw sa buhay. So, lahat tayo sa Pilipinas may kanya-kanyang pinaniniwalaan, kanya-kanyang mga definition ng bawat iba't ibang pamumuhay. And also sa family naman is respect other beliefs. Of course, may kanya-kanyang sabay ng belief na dapat ganito ganito gumising ng umaga para gumawa ng gawaing bahay at iba pa. At isa na rin dito, karagdagan dito as a student is as a college student, also a as a future educator to young people, I need to be an influencer to them for them to act accordingly, and also give them motivation to give a respect to other people, whether it is Catholic or different kind of religion we have here in the Philippines. And also sa kultura ng mga Pilipino, meron tayong mga pare na simula is parang kasanayan nilang mamuhay sa mga bukid, katulad ng mga ita, at iba pang katulad ng Igorot at iba pa. So, that's the module 1.
I will tackle about the moral agent developing virtues as a habit. First, we should know about virtue. Virtue is a habit or established capability for performing good actions. Moral character refers to the existence or lack of virtues such as integrity, courage, fortitude, honesty, and loyalty. Virtue is equals to excellence. Intellectual virtue can be taught. A good person succeeds at rational activity.
Mama.
Moral virtue is acquired through excellent habits. We become good by doing good things. We become virtuous by practicing virtuous acts. Virtuous habits of character ought to be stable and enduring, and not more products of fortune, but learning constantly practice and cultivation. Every act one does ought to come from his moral development. Finally, in the circular relation of acts and characters, the circle symbolizes perfection or eternity, whereby one must constantly struggle in achieving one's perfect character.
Feelings and institutions, or what we call as moral emotion, play a major role in most of the ethical decisions people make. Itong feelings or institutions or what we call moral emotions, they play major role in most of ethical decisions people make. Meaning, tandaan natin palagi na decisions people make vary when they are happy from when they are sad or emotional. Meaning, magkaiba yung mga magiging actions natin o magiging salita natin kapag tayo ay galit. Iba din kapag tayo ay masaya. Iba din kapag tayo ay nalulungkot. So, words that come out of our mouth sometimes are also affected by emotions that we feel. And, so with our actions, kapag masaya tayo, may mga nasasabi tayong hindi dapat natin masabi. At kapag malungkot tayo o galit, may mga nasasabi or nagagawa tayo na hindi naman natin intend or sinasadyang gawin. Kaya lang, nadala lang tayo ng galit natin or ng emosyon natin. In short, yung nararamdaman nating sadness, happiness, they are emotions. Meaning to say, lahat ng ating ginagawa at ating mga nasasabi ay naaapektuhan ng ating emosyon. Next is, according to the book of Bu Sanchez and his book, Heart Detox expressed that there is a difference between experiencing the emotion and expressing the emotion. Magkaiba yung nararamdaman mong emosyon sa naipapakita mong emosyon. Bilang tao, our emotions are already on us. Hindi natin pwedeng tanggalin yung mga nararamdaman natin kasi bilang tao, normal sa atin yan. Nararamdaman natin maging masaya, malungkot, o bigla na lang nagagalit. Kung hindi mo yung nararamdaman or manhid ka, baka abnormal ka, Joe. Now, the problem is that sometimes yung ibang tao nararamdaman nila yung emosyon nila tulad na lang kapag tayo ay galit. Na ipapakita natin, di ba, kapag tayo galit, may nasasabi or may nagagawa tayo dahil nadadala tayo ng ating emosyon. But, sabi nga ni Bu Sanchez, dapat i-experience or maramdaman lang natin at pag-isipang mabuti ang bawat desisyon na gagawin. Dahil may nasasabi or may nagagawa tayo kapag naipapakita natin yun. Like, for example, may nakaaway ka sa social media at balak mo mag-post ng masasama about sa kanya. Ngayon, dito mo na mapapasok yung sinabi sa libro ni Bu Sanchez na dapat maramdaman lang natin yan at pag pinag-iisipan bago gumawa ng hakbang. Dapat iniisip mo yung magiging resulta ng gagawin mo. Dahil for sure, sa uli, pagsisisihan mo yan. Okay, may nakita akong post sa Facebook na sabi daw, never reply when you are angry, never make a promise when you are happy, and never make a decision when you are sad. Huwag daw tayo mag-reply if galit tayo kasi kapag galit tayo, may nasasabi tayong hindi dapat masabi. Huwag tayo magpangako sa tao if di naman natin matutupad dahil nadala ka lang ng emosyon. At huwag magdesisyon kapag ikaw ay malungkot. For example, nag-away kayo ng jowa mo. Relate ko dyan kasi mostly relate lahat, diba class? So, nag-away kayo sa sobrang lungkot mo, nakapag-desisyon ka na makipaghiwalay sa kanya. Hindi mo sana intend na gawin yon. But, nangyari na. So, pinagsisisihan mo kasi nadala ka lang ng emosyon mo. Na-realize mo na hindi mo pala kayang wala siya or makita siyang mapunta sa iba. So, when we overcome our emotions, lahat maaapektuhan. Kaya pag-iisipan palagi, ha?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eileen B. Pantalia, and I am the presenter of Week 4, Module 4, which is the reason and impartiality as a minimum requirement for morality. But before that, let us define what is reason and impartiality. First is reason. Reason is the basis or motive for an action. It is the capacity, logical, and for consciously making sense of things. Whereas impartiality is a principle of holding justice that decision ought to be based on objective criteria rather than the basis of biases, prejudice, or preferring the benefit to one person over another for improper reasons. It involves the idea that each individual's each individual's interest and point of view is equally important. So, reason and impartiality are considered as a minimum requirement for morality because moral moral truths are truths of reason. That is, a moral judgment is true if it is imposed by better reasons than the alternatives. Genuine value judgment ought to be backed up by pertinent reason. Um, reason Reason and impartiality is a minimum requirement for observing moral action since reason comes from logic, facts, and principles of individual in which people mind will think rationally that express good behavior rather than bad things, and to be just and fair to every individual, not only for themselves, but for everyone. For me, reason and impartiality is an instrument to live morally because when we use reason, we need to choose the right fact, equal, and equal for the majority. Also, impartiality used to treat people fairly, whatever their culture, color, perspective, and beliefs. Reason and impartiality can be observed and practiced most especially in a courtroom, since we believe that justice should be based on facts and right principles, whether the person that being defended and protected not belong to the upper class of society or in a higher position. So we tend to do good over evil things. Um, when my mother buy food, she shared it to us equally divided so that every one of us would be satisfied and won't feel that we are not loved. She's not sharing it only to my sister, but to all of us. We show fairness, honesty, equality in all aspects of our life because God created us equally but different. So we need to do it not only for our family but also for all the creations. So that's all. Thank you.
This is my narrative in Week 5, Moral Courage. Means doing the right things even at the risk of convenience, ridicule, punishment, loss of job or security or social status. It requires that we rise above the apathy, complacency, hatred, cynicism, and fear-mongering in our political systems, socio-economic divisions, and cultural religious differences. It requires us to make judgment about who actions or behavior are supportive of our highest ideals and which ones are destructive. It asks us to recognize our responsibilities and see the consequences of our own actions. It is the ability to stand up for the practice what which are considered ethical moral behavior when faced with a dilemma, even if it is means going against countervailing pressure to otherwise. It is important because it can help us during ethical dilemmas. Despite the adversity they may face in doing so.
So week 7 is all about frameworks and principles behind our moral disposition frameworks. So this is all about the various approaches or philosophy as frameworks and principles behind our moral disposition frameworks, situations of every philosophy and the frameworks and principles behind every philosophy. So ethics is concerned on all levels of life, acting properly as individuals, creating responsible groups, organizations, institutions, and governments, and making our society as a whole more ethical. So there are 5 ethical frameworks: the divine command ethics, the deontological ethics, the virtue ethics, the consequential or utilitarianism, and the relative or relativism. So first, the deontological or the duty ethics. Deontological ethics focus on moral duties, obligations, intentions that guide our ethical decision making, not goals, ends, and objectives. So deontological or deon means duty or obligation. For example, the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule. According to Immanuel Kant, to be moral, one must seek to do one's duty no matter what your inclinations or the consequences involved. So the deontological tells us that do what is rationally or logically right for human beings. So express your goodwill by following duty. So next is virtue ethics. Virtue is a disposition of habitual way of acting. It takes practice, and only when you act in a virtuous way with honest intent are you truly virtuous, actually being kind to others, not pretending to be kind to gain something. So doing what is right is about being good or kind or generous. Virtue ethics involve personal responsibility and is entirely secular. It is about developing qualities that will promote eudaimonia or happiness. So by giving service to others, that is the greatest happiness in life. So virtue ethics tells us that do what is humanly best. Plato's virtue ethics is balance and moderation, not what is right, but what is best. Virtue ethics is a philosophy developed by Aristotle and other ancient Greeks. It is quest to understand and live a life of moral character. So virtue ethics help us understand what it means to be a virtuous human being. And it gives us a guide for living life without giving us specific rules for resolving ethical dilemmas. So cultivate the virtues that encourage human flourishing. Is consequentialism or utilitarianism. So utilitarianism states that something is moral or good when it produces the greatest amount for the greatest number of people. In utilitarianism, good is defined as the existence of pleasure and the absence of pain. To paraphrase, something is good if it does more good than harm for a lot of people. So this is called the greatest happiness principle. For example, in field trip, we agree that we students will love to go in any other places. For example, Jana and her friends and her classmates decided to went in a place to fresh their minds because of bombarded with projects, paperwork, assignments. So they decided to go on a field trip. Few of her classmates have decided to go in expensive but far places, but majority of her classmates decided to go in near and cheap place. So basically, the group of Jana will go to the near and cheapest places because majority of it voted for it, and that also good that they are all together coming in that place. So they are happy and enjoying. So that is an example of principal utility because majority of it are happy and few of the people are less happy. So if an action is moral, it increases the amount of happiness in the world. So in utilitarianism tells us that do what causes the best results, the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. Seek the greatest benefit to the greatest numbers of people involved. Next is relative or relativism. Love should be applied in a way that is relative to each situation. It tells us that do what is right for the situation, do what our culture tells us to do, and do what our conscience tells us to do. So always do what is most loving.
This Module 8 is all about moral versus non-moral standards. There are 6 characteristics that set moral standard from non-moral standards. Number 1. Moral standards involve behavior that seriously affect others' person's well-being. 2. Moral standards take a more important consideration than other standards including self-interest. 3. Moral standards do not depend on any external authority but in how the person perceives the reasonableness of the action. 4. Moral standards are believed to be universal. 5. Moral standards are based on objectivity. 6. Moral standards are associated with vocabulary that depicts emotion or feelings. Human act versus act of man. When we say human act, action done consciously and freely by the agent or by a human being. Essential qualities, constituents. There are 3 elements of human acts: knowledge of the act, freedom, and voluntariness. Man takes responsibility of this action. Some example of this would be telling the truth, going to work, finishing your homework, and returning a lost item, etc. While act of man, action beyond one consciousness, not depend on the intellect and the will. Essential qualities of act of man: done without knowledge, without consent, and involuntary. Acts of man can become human act when he or she employs his or her intellect and will in performing the act. The best example of this includes breathing, growing of the hair or nails, dreaming, sleepwalking. Why is ethic important? Because we, humans, do not live in isolation. We have better chances to survive if we help each other. To maintain order, we need to set rules. As a student, of course, it is important to recognize that moral ideas vary throughout countries and that our own context and culture have a significant impact on our beliefs. The moral standards deal with issues that have a significant human influence, either negatively or positively. However, this is not always the case with non-moral standards, so there is no pressure on us to hold others to our moral standards at all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eileen B. Pantalia, and I am the presenter of Week 9, Module 9, which is the Moral Dilemma. But before that, let me define what is dilemma. Dilemma is a situation where a person is forced to choose between 2 or more conflicting options, neither of which is acceptable. Moral dilemma are situations in which the person or a person is forced to choose between 2 or more conflicting options, neither of which is acceptable, and have a moral reasons for choosing each actions. It is a conflict in which must consider 2 or more values or duties, but only one can be given attention and set aside all the rest. Moral dilemma is concerned about the rightness or goodness of our choices. For example, it was your first day to work with the hospital you applied for, and as a registered nurse, it was your responsibility to work on time. In an unexpected event, there is a woman that is about to give birth, asking for help. Would you help her to save the lives or just go because if you help her, you can be late and yun. Uh, there are three kinds of moral dilemma. The personal, organizational, and structural dilemma. Personal dilemma are those that are encountered and resolved personally by the individual. For example, I have a sister who is suffering from kidney failure, and in order for her to survive, she need a donor that would give her one kidney. But there is nothing that much for her. I can donate my kidney for my sister to survive, but if I donated my kidney in the long run, um, I may suffer too. But if I didn't donate my kidney, my sister will be die. So, yon. While organizational dilemma is refers to ethical cases encountered and resolved by social organization. It happens when an organization is forced to make choices, and structural dilemma are dilemma encountered and resolved by network organization. It is a conflict of perspective sectors, group, organization, and institution that may be affected by the situation they made. So, how can we address moral dilemma? I think the very best way to address moral dilemma is to trust in God, because I believe that when you have a trust in God, He will give you an open mind and make a decision in life that will bring you in a right path. Um, God will not give us a challenge or challenges that He know we can't overcome. Sometimes if we make a decision and struggling because of it, always think that it is His way to make us a better version of ourselves. When we believe in God, we can think, act, and make a decision that is enough. That is good enough, rather. We can see Him physically, but I know and I feel that He is with us. But we can just rely on God all the time. We should also take our part, and that is to act. Since God only give human the rational thinking, so we should use our ability to think good and act good. So, yun.
Morning, sir. My name is Christine Georgine Marcelo from BEd 1A. I am the presenter of Group 1 for the week 10, which is the foundation of morality, freedom for one's act to others. So, why do we need to have a foundation when it comes to ethics? So, sa bahay may foundation. Kapag gumawa ka ng bahay, meron kang 4 na foundation. Without these 4 corners na matibay, babagsak yung bahay mo. But, the greater foundation must be on the ground kasi kahit matibay ang foundation mo, kung hindi matibay yung ground mo, babagsak at babagsak yung bahay mo. So, sa family, mayroong tatay at nanay at mayroong mga anak. Parents serves as the foundation of the family, so sila ang gumagawa ng balance sa pamilya. With absence of the mother or father, mababawasan yung pundasyon or baka mag-collapse yung pamilya. That is why, in order for the family to stay strong, as it should be, dapat intact si mother and si father. para okay yung mga anak nila. Kasi 'di ba kapag walang nanay or tatay, naapektuhan yung mga anak. Yung mga anak yung nagiging kawawa. So, sa ethics, meron din tayong tinatawag na foundation. Because freedom is the foundation in ethics. Without freedom, ethics would not have be a leg to stand on. So, freedom is actually described as the power or right to act, to speak, or to think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Ang freedom, ito yung kakayahan natin na gumawa, magsalita, at mag-isip nang walang pumipigil sa atin. You can do whatever you want to. You can speak whenever you want to speak. You can think whatever you want to think. But remember that freedom is not absolute. Hindi siya limitless. In short, hindi pwede yung lahat ng gusto mong gawin ay gagawin mo. Hindi pwedeng naisip mo, iisipin mo na. Because freedom is not absolute. It has limits. For example, pwede tayong sumuntok basta walang natatamaan. Pwede tayong kumanta at pwedeng mag-ingay basta walang naiistorbong kapitbahay. So, that is freedom. Dapat maging responsible tayo because in exercising freedom, napakalaya natin gumawa ng gusto natin, mag-isip at magsalita na maaaring makasakit tayo or makaapekto ng ibang kalayaan ng ibang tao. So, we need to be responsible enough to exercise our freedom. And we need to be accountable for the consequences of using our freedom.
My narrative in week 11, Ethics and Religion. Religion provides inner strength. Religious faith has often been a source of courageous action and can be a source of courage to fight oppressions. And understand the positive and negative effects of religion stands out throughout all history as an undeniable power and force. It is also possible to see how religion has had a great influence on everything from government to social order and family relationships.
The majority of religious people believe that doing God's will is a good thing. God requires us to live in a righteous and just manner. And the underwear bomber represents the worst example of someone acting evilly while seeming to be following God's commands. If God exists, then the crucial philosophical question this raises is whether or not he could ever order someone to commit an otherwise immoral act. Does God merely make moral laws as he sees fit, or is there a higher standard that God must meet? According to a long-standing school in religious ethics known as the Divine Command Theory, God does indeed make immoral laws solely out of his own free will. If God decided to create a particular moral standard, it automatically becomes moral because God wants it to be. Murder becomes a wrong if God determines that it is wrong. But this is also true of other potential acts. The activity therefore becomes unethically required if God decided to make it so that everyone must hop on one foot on Thursday. The moral laws may even be purposefully reversed by God, making morally wrong acts like murder acceptable. We shall examine the primary defenses and refutations of the Divine Command Theory in the chapter. Many disagreements over the connection between religion and ethics center on this theory. It raises questions about whether the concept of God plays a critical role in moral judgments. Whether it's possible to have a purely secular standard or right and the wrong, and whether religious beliefs are in a privileged position to know moral truth. The underwear bomber and the like-minded religious terrorists claim that they are in such a privileged position. But it is not just terrorists. Several of society's most controversial moral issues today, such as abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment, gay marriage, invariably involve claims about moral standards that God presumably established. The more we comprehend the theories of morality and God's will, the easier it will be for us to understand those assertions.
The ontological theory of ethics. The ontological theory of ethics postulates that morality lies on actions that people perform rather than consequences of their actions. According to Immanuel Kant, goodness is not in the consequences of actions, but an intrinsic attribute of an action. Rationality of human being enables them to weigh their actions before they're doing it. Therefore, it means that a good or bad actions originates from the mind of the person, not the consequences of their action.
Week 15, Happiness. Happiness is a state of a man which corresponds to the greatest internal satisfaction of his being conditions, completeness and conciseness of life, realization, his human destination. There are moments that when our soul rejoices of happiness. For example, sincere smile from another person to us, birth of a child, and nature walk. So happiness does not mean having all our personal needs, not about our surroundings or what you have in everything, and it is not for the things that you are abundant. But happiness is about our good appetite. And we as human, we need to fix our mind, our heart, our soul, and our will. We need to follow our heart and mind to find the true happiness. To live a happy life, we need to do what we love. Be thankful, be careful with who you surround yourself with, and be content with who you are and continue to strive to be better. According to Aristotle, happiness depends on ourselves. It is the central purpose of human life and is a goal, and it depends on the development of virtue. While Socrates says that happiness is obtained through human effort, harmonizing the different parts of one's soul. To make us happy, we need to have a good sleep patterns, regular exercise and achievements, social connections, romantic relationships, family and friends, compassion and kindness, forgiveness, and last is mindfulness. So by having all of this, we will become healthier and live longer, more generous, more resilient, and smarter and more creative. So all in all, we will become happy as much as we decided to be. So happiness is inside us. And never depend on anyone else but yourself for happiness.
Hi, my name is Colin S. Anoriano. I'm BEd 1A, so I'm going to summarize the module 16. So, what is true beauty? So, true beauty, sabi nga nila, is not just about the physical self, pati na yung sa ganda ng kalooban mo. At marami nagsasabi na hindi dapat tayo nagbabasa sa panlabas na nyo, kundi dapat isiniisip natin kung ano yung nasa loob ng isang tao, kung gaano kaganda ang kanyang loob. So, maraming mga tao ang nagsasabi na hindi dapat nagbabase tayo sa physical anyo lamang dahil hindi daw tayo tatanda na dala-dala yung gandang itsura o physical appearance natin. Kasi nagsisimula ito dapat sa ating sarili. Kung gaano tayo kaganda sa kung gaano tayo kabuti sa ibang tao pag may nangangailangan, at para sa kanila is gaano ito nagre-reflect sa iyo, kasi ang pagiging mabuti is nagiging treasure yun ng tao at nagiging memorable sa kanila. So contributing nga is dapat ay ina-apply din sa sarili, or dapat ina-apply sa sarili upang magkaroon ng magandang puso. Sabi magandang puso is parang dapat tumutulong ka sa ibang tao, dapat hindi masama ang ugali mo, o para sa ganun ay respetuhin at igalang ka rin ng tao sa paraan na nire-respeto mo sila. So ano ba ang benefits doon sa community? So sa community, meron nga magandang puso, hindi lang magandang paglabas, is makakatulong ito upang magkaroon ng magandang pag-uusap sa tao, at magkakaroon kayo ng communication na hindi lang puro yabang, kundi pati na rin yung mga nagiging totoo ka sa sarili mo. Kasi yun nga, pag nakatulong sa community, so volunteer ka, is parang nakikitaan ka ng magandang loob ng mga taong tinulungan mo. So sa student naman is parang sa panahon ngayon, kailangan natin, it's not just about the physical abilities but also the good heart. So dapat hindi ka nagiging judgmental sa ibang tao, or kinikriticize mo ng pagkatao nila. Pagustuluhan mo sila upang magkaroon ng idea kung ano yung mga ginagawa nila masama, at makatulong din sa sarili nila na baguhin yung pagiging masamang tao nila, or sabihin na natin na hindi maganda ang pag-ugali. So as a student, dapat ine-educate mo sila na dapat hindi lang tayo dapat lagi bumabasa sa physical appearance, pati na din sa ating inner self. So, sa family naman, katulong itong pagiging tribute or sa panloob ng kabutihan is parang makatulong ka rin sa inyong magulang at sa inyong mga kapatid. Para sa ganun is hindi na mahulang yung mga magulang mo sa mga bagay na dapat na as anak dapat tinutulungan mo naging mabuti yung mga kapatid mo, paano maging respeto sa ibang tao, at maging role model ka rin sa kanila, para sa ganyan habang lumalaki sila is mas naiintindihan nila na hindi lang dapat importante yung physical appearance na kagandahan, yung kagandang kutis, magandang pangatawan, pati na rin yung loob mo as a person, kasi mas tumatatak yung mga ginagawa mong kabutihan kaysa sa yung panglabas na. That's all.
This module 17 is all about moral qualities. But before we proceed with our topic, let's define morals and values. When we say morals are the rules which people use to guide their behavior and thinking. When an individual is dealing with or capable of distinguishing between right and wrong. Definition of values. A values is a principle, standard, or quality considered worthwhile or desirable. Traits of moral values. Responsibility. Being accountable in word and deed. Having a sense of duty to fulfill tasks with reliability, dependability, and commitment. Perseverance. Pursuing worthy objectives with determination and patience while exhibiting fortitude when confronted with failure. Self-discipline. Demonstrating hard work, controlling your emotion, words, action, impulses, and desire, giving your best in all situations. Caring. Showing understanding of others by treating them like kindness, compassion, generosity, and a forgiving spirit. Citizenship. Being law-abiding and involved in service to school, community, and country. Honesty. Telling the truth, admitting wrongdoing, being trustworthy, and acting with integrity. Courage. Doing the right thing in face of difficulty and following your conscience instead of the crowd. Fairness. Practicing justice equity, and equality, cooperating with one another, recognizing the uniqueness and value of each individual within our diverse society. Integrity, a firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values, being honest, trustworthy, and incorruptible. Patriotism, a love for and loyalty to one's country. Respect, showing high regard for an authority, other people, self, and country. Treating others as you would want to be treated. Understanding that all people have value as human beings. As a student, we need ethics, morals, and values because it identifies us as people and a society. Everyone needs to adhere to this standard of conduct. If we concede that each of us may decide for ourselves what the appropriate thing to do, they serve as guidelines for choosing for oneself between good and bad, or right and wrong. Anyone who wants to make honest, believable, and just judgment and relationship in their daily life must have this moral awareness. Through ethics, morals, and values will teach us on how to improve ourselves as well as the world.